Use Management Committee. I've been joined by the Honorable Council Member Paul Krikorian. My understanding is that budget is running late, so we don't anticipate Councilman Huizar. He's over there. Okay. Mr. Clerk, are we okay with the cards? Okay, we'll be cutting off public cards for public hearing. So any more cards, we'll put them on the file. But given the healthy stack we have here, I think we'll limit. So anyone that's submitting more cards, we'll just put you on the record. But we're not accepting any more public comment cards at this juncture. Well, it's Tuesday, May 10th. We have several items we can cover. And perhaps we'll run through those that we will continue. So those of you who are here for those items will know that these items will be continued. So item number 2, seeing no cards, will be continued to this committee for 1 week. That's number 2. Item number 8 will be continued to this committee on May 24th. That's item number 8. I don't see any cards on that one. Councilman, we're not that lucky. We only have 2 continuances. We do have a communication on item number 1 from Mr. Brian Motor, who will be withdrawing his commission nominee proposed appointment. So we can approve item number 1 to approve the mayor's request for withdrawal. Okay. 3 and 4. Seeing no cards. I'm sorry, 3, we do have a card. No, 4, we have a card. We'll call that special. Number 3, we don't have any cards. We can move to adopt that one, item number 3. Okay, you can move on that item. 5, we have a presentation by the department, so we'll hold that special. 6, we do have cards on number 6. Number 7, we have cards. Item number 8, we don't have any cards. That's what continued. For no reason we don't have cards. Item 9, we also have cards. And number 10, do we have a report from the planning director?
Good afternoon, council members. Michael LeGrand for the record, Director of Planning. We've had a busy week in the Plan Department. Our first ever newsletter has been released, and I'll provide copies to the committee members. We're getting those printed currently, but we have digital copies that are available on our webpage, just highlighting some of the successes the department's had and some of the issues we're working on. It also gives a little brief history of zoning in Los Angeles. We'll be doing the newsletter quarterly to get information out to our constituents and the various neighborhood councils and stakeholders in Los Angeles so they can follow the plan initiatives going on in their neighborhood and also citywide that may be of interest to them. In addition, last week we went through the Budget and Finance Committee with the mayor's proposed budget. We're very happy to see an aggressive dialogue with the committee members around community planning and some of the things that are important to them, and we look forward to working with the council as we go forward next week through the budget process in front of the full city council. But it's been going very well. The amount of time and dedication the council has spent going through these issues has been very genuine and deliberate, and as we're looking for tough cuts Seeing the council's dedication to services that mean a lot to the residents and how to provide those has been very enlightening. And so we look forward to our budget hearing next week in front of the full city council. One other highlight, last week I had an opportunity to meet with officials from the Housing and Urban Development Department from the federal government, as well as the Federal Highway Administration, talking about livability and some grant opportunities for Los Angeles for the next round of regional transportation planning. And last year we were beaten out by Fresno, and so I made sure that they were aware of our competitive nature and how we really feel our application was superior to what they had funded in this last round, and we're hoping to have a lot more success in funding some regional transportation plans as well as land use plans for the Southern California region, working with SCAG as well as the department, combine our efforts and putting a grant proposal forward for the next funding cycle. So we're talking to many of the officials up there about some of the idiosyncrasies of their application process and making sure that we understand the regulations correctly. But it looks like there might be an opportunity for us to hopefully have more success than we did last year.
Great. I just want to share with my colleague in the audience and those listening that the City of LA did receive the President's Award from the Senate California Association of Governments for our work on transit-oriented districts and creating walkable communities through our TODs, and we'll be asking the Executive Director to come in and present the award to the Council. Councilor LaBonge is with me at the session, so we'll have that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But congratulations.
Great.
That was a lot of work from a lot of folks who are moving the, it's called the 1030, the 3010 plan, and moving money and hopefully making City of LA a little bit more mobile. So that being said, congratulations and thank you. Okay. Number 4, I understand, is we can move on that because the card we did get was a comment from the council, so we can move that. That'll be item number 4 as well. We can have a second on that? Okay, so that includes 3 and 4. So the first 4 items have been taken care of, I believe. Now, what I'd like to do is go a little bit out of order. Well, listen to this. Let's go to item number 5. We can make that quick because I do have a zoning administrator has to be at a hearing, and she's also presenting on another item. So, Roberto, we can do item number 5?
Yes, Councilman. Item 5 is a building and safety and COO report. It has to do with a request from Building and Safety to fund the phase 1 of the Permit LA project with Construction Services Trust Fund monies.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Panera from LA Building and Safety, and briefly tell you about what the request involves. We have interactive voice recognition and automated response.
Can you put the microphone a little bit closer to you
lower?
and
Is that
speak
better?
right into it? Yes.
Okay. System that we implemented about 10 years ago. It had 12 lines that would handle approximately 15,000 calls coming in and 28,000 calls going out. We're down to 1 line. It's about 16 calls a minute. What does that mean to building and safety? We get about 2,200 calls for inspections, either incoming or outgoing, every day. The computer is able to, through the touch tone phone, allow the customer to schedule an inspection, and then the computer will call the customer back and tell them their window of inspection, when to expect it. Recently, about 2-3 months ago, the last line went down, and we thought that was it. But we were able to cannibalize some parts and put some life back into the remaining 1 line. But the result of that is we lost some of the inspection activity, so customers were waiting for the inspectors to show up, and they didn't because they didn't know they were supposed to go to those sites. It would be very chaotic if the system did die once and for all, because the estimate we have currently is that it would take about 3 months to replace the system. The fees that are generated from inspection activities actually do have a one-stop surcharge on them, and that money was used to build the initial system. So it is a justified use of the funding.
Okay, I first want to thank you for your hard work. This will allow us to understand destinations.
That's right, Councilmember Reyes. What happens is the computer will actually take in the touch tone request by permit number or by address and then automatically set up the inspector's route. So at that instant, the supervisors all the way up to our general manager would be able to know where the inspector should be stopping that day, as well as the customer can also know where the stops would take place. Without it, we have to go back to paper, pencil, and phone calls.
And that's a fundamental difference between the existing PCIS code compliance system and the proposed permit LA code compliance project, is that it gives us the technical capability of knowing destinations, having a greater sense of hours, and predictability for the applicant, and knowing when we can have an inspector out there.
Yes, it definitely, well, the technology right now is obsolete, so it's problematic at best. And to rebuild the system with current technology gives us redundancy and a more robust service. Plus, it provides us with data that will allow us to do a good job, an excellent job at tracking our resources where they are, where they should be, and for the customer as well, be able to track it online.
Councilman, any questions?
Yeah, it sounds like an important step forward. When the routing is determined as a result of these requests, is that routing preserved in some way so that it can be audited later?
It is.
So, for example, to be frank, we've had some recent issues in the news that have come up, and there have been allegations against some inspectors. This would provide an opportunity to be able to go back after the fact and determine where that person should have been, what stops they should have made, and use it as an evaluative tool, a management tool, and even an investigative tool if need be to protect against wrongdoing as well. Would it not?
Our current system collects that data as well. It's not a GPS system. It would possibly set the foundation for a future GPS system, but there's a lot of technological and other issues that we're looking into surrounding GPS. But the current system also records the route. It also records exceptions to the routes. What would help us is better reporting tools on analyzing changes to the route. And those reporting tools we don't have right now, but we definitely have the data. We have an audit trail now, but it's labor intensive to analyze the data.
Which makes it much harder for department management to be able to do that on a regular basis, because it's so labor intensive.
Right. Our current system is 14 years old. The automated inspection portion of it is 10 years old. So Councilmember Reyes also knows there's a bigger initiative, the Development Reform Initiative, which is a part of a bigger project. And in that respect, we would have more transparency to the public as well as to our internal customers. But if this dies, 3 months of paper and pencil and manual phone calls, it would be very chaotic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'd like to ask the CEO if they can give us a report for the record in terms of source of funding and application. Good afternoon, ma'am. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Melissa Fleming with the CAO.
Hi.
The role of the CAO in the process of evaluating construction services trust fund requests is to ensure that the construction services trust funds are being used in a manner appropriate. The fund receives revenue based on a 2% surcharge on all activity that occurs at the construction services centers. So all expenditures must be made to support or enhance the quality of services provided at the construction services centers. And our evaluation of this item, we did determine that, yes, it meets the criteria for construction services trust fund funding, and as such, recommended approval of the request.
Great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Appreciate your hard work. So, Councilman, we could concur with the CEO and approve the from the Construction Services Trust Fund for the replacement of a plan check and inspection system, the PCIS, as well as the automated inspection request, the AIRS, interactive voice response IVR system, and instruct the Department of Building and Safety to submit the technical details of the project to the Information Technology Agency, ITA, for review and feedback prior to the procurement of any associated project hardware, software, or consulting services. So moved, and that'll be the action of this item. Thank you, Roberto.
The building and safety report, Councilman, you may want to note and file that.
We'll note and file that report. Thank you, sir. And no public cards on this item. So what we're going to do, and it's kind of a reflection of our state of the state, we have a planning official who needs to be at another hearing very soon, but she's also integral to this item, so we'll move to item number 9 to make sure we can get her out of this committee, and then she can attend to the other obligations. And that's what happened when Linda Smith is high in demand.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. Thank you so much. I'm Linda Smith with the LA City Planning Department, and item number 9 is a general plan amendment and a zone change for a project located at 2327 South Flower Street and 2300 South Flower Street. Project is also known as the Lorenzo Project. On February 10th, 2011, the City Planning Commission approved a general plan amendment and zone change for the parcel at 2300 South Flower. The other address was taken out of consideration for any entitlements. So the project that's before you today is just for the parcel at 2300 South Flower. What we're looking at is the development of a mixed-use project, approximately 1,383,000 square feet. 919 dwelling units are proposed, and 34,000 square feet of commercial space, including retail and a 6,000 square foot restaurant. The proposed project is approximately 6 stories in height and would include code required parking. 367 of those parking spaces would be reserved for an existing orthopedic hospital facility that exists on the site. As I indicated, February 10th, 2011, the City Planning Commission approved a general plan amendment which basically removed the applicability of this particular site to being held to Height District 1. The Southeast Los Angeles Community Plan limits properties that have a general plan amendment of community commercial to a floor area ratio of 1.5 to 1. So effectively, the commission approved that general plan amendment, and the project will so far be developed at a 6 to 1 floor area ratio. The City Planning Commission also approved a zone change. This zone change was placed on the site. It's a permanent zone change, and it limited the site to hospital, educational, medical office, parking, and related uses only. That zone change was approved and thereby allowed for any of the underlying uses allowed in the C2 zone to be developed on the site. There were other entitlement requests also approved by the City Planning Commission, just in general conditional use for alcohol that would be related to a proposed restaurant. There was a determination to allow a reduction in parking because the site is located immediately adjacent to the MTA 23rd and Flower Expo rail station as well. Multiple entitlements were withdrawn on that date as well because they all affected the secondary site and not this primary site. It appears that an appeal has been filed. I will read to you the causes of the appeal. The first request in the applicant's appeal is for modification of the site plan review approval. That would be to incorporate the addition of a 7,500 square foot community serving medical clinic in the project's ground floor. It indicates that that is in furtherance of the project's cooperation agreement with 11 major community stakeholder groups. And the second request is for modification of the site plan review approval to allow the project to have open wrought iron balconies. That, in a nutshell, is really the entitlements that were asked and the overview of the appeal. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them at this time.
When we speak to the levels of changes and entitlements, we are changing from what to what?
When we, in this particular case, the change in the entitlements was really based on the fact that the project was reduced in size. Initially, it was much greater. There were 1,400 dwelling units proposed. The site had 2 locations directly across the street from each other. So it was a physical reduction in the actual size of the project.
And my understanding is that when it came to commission, there was a document of sorts that spoke to community benefits that, if I understood correctly, the commissioners did not have much time to deliberate or review these benefits. Are those benefits in any way tied to these entitlements in any way?
No, they are not. At the January meeting, the applicant presented a cooperation agreement. Basically, it was to include community benefits, multiple community benefits as part of the project. They were offered initially as volunteered conditions. It was briefly discussed by the commission that those volunteered conditions could not be enforced by the city, so the case was continued to February. At the February meeting, a new cooperative agreement was presented to the commission. There was very limited discussion at the commission meeting because the items on that, in that document had not been notified for the public, and the commission was therefore admonished not to have a full discussion of those items. Therefore, no action was taken by the commission.
Okay. I'll have more questions later. Any questions from the staff at this time? Well, let's go through the cards and proceed forward. So the appellant is actually the applicant, to my understanding. So let's have the applicant come forward and give us the nature of their appeal. We've got 3 different persons, so of the 3, whoever wants to come on up, and you guys could do a tag team or...
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Reyes, Councilmember Kokorian. I'm David Goldberg of Latham & Watkins, counsel to the applicant, and I'm joined this afternoon by Greg Smith, the applicant's vice president, and my partner, George Milston. I will just introduce the project briefly. Greg Smith will walk you through the project's design, and then George will complete our presentation. Well, we are extremely proud to be presenting the Lorenzo project, a transit-oriented mixed-use development that will invest over $250 million in South Los Angeles. Equally proud that it's subject to an historic cooperation agreement among 11 major community stakeholder groups. We appreciate their participation in this project. We look forward to being community partners with them. And we're proud that the Planning Commission gave this project a unanimous recommendation and approval following a positive staff report. The project's been subject to an extensive review process. We've successfully addressed community design comments and other comments from the council office as well as the Planning Commission. And so I'd now like to introduce Greg Smith to walk you through the project's design.
Good afternoon, Chair Reyes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Greg Smith, Vice President, G.H. Palmer. The site is a 9.5-acre parking lot south of downtown, adjacent to the Children's Orthopedic Outpatient Clinic and Los Angeles Trade Tech. We are directly on the new Metro 23rd Street light rail station, just one stop from downtown and USC. Our initial design has evolved and improved substantially based on our close work with the community, the council office, planning, and the urban design studio, resulting in a more livable project that meets the needs of its residents and this community. The project includes 919 residential units with detailed attention given to landscaping along the street frontages. The residential units are located above the ground floor, community serving retail, which will include a sit-down restaurant. As a cornerstone of our community benefits program, we have incorporated a 7,500 square foot community serving medical clinic in the ground floor with a 5% very low affordable component and reserved 10% of the project's 34,000 square feet of retail for local small businesses. Lorenzo's relationship to the transit station is critical here because how we treat this station will define other projects for years to come. We broke down the massing along Flower Street with building breaks and color changes to make the facade more permeable, adding windows, more balconies, and an additional residential entrance. The goal is to enable residents and shoppers to both easily see and access the train, giving them a greater sense of urban mobility. The retail uses are directly across from the station, and we stepped the building back to create two public plazas here to promote pedestrian use and retail activity, including a landmark tower element. We also lightened the building's base with cast stone to make the central plaza a brighter and more livable space. As the project transitions from the station into the neighborhood, we added loft-style units along 23rd with front doors and landscape areas to activate the street and create a neighborhood feel. Lorenzo's main entry from Adams is enhanced with significant landscaping that defines the entry plaza, creating a promenade with clear pedestrian access to the project's front door. 6 months ago, we submitted Lorenzo under Building and Safety's new parallel plan check process. The building department's positive attitude towards customer service and the level of cooperation we are receiving is commendable. And through their hard work, I am delighted to report that Lorenzo is in a position to break ground in a matter of weeks, not months. We're ready to go now. So on behalf of the developer and the entire project team, I want to thank this community and the city for their inspired ideas and suggestions to make the development even better. Lorenzo represents what is great about collaborative city planning, and I want to especially acknowledge the work of Simon Pastuch at the Urban Design Studio because he truly cares about making this city a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Milston, or? Okay, go ahead.
David Goldberg, Latham & Watkins. I'd like to just quickly walk you through the Community Benefits Program, and then George will conclude our presentation, if that's okay.
Please.
Thank you. As Greg mentioned, the cornerstone of the Community Benefits Program is a 7,500 square foot medical clinic, which we'll design and build out at no cost to the clinic provider, provide the space rent-free for 20 years, and provide funding for initial operating expenses, medical equipment, and community health promoters. We estimate the cost to build out the space at about $4.5 million and to provide the medical equipment and startup costs at over $2 million. In addition to the project's 5.5% affordable housing component, we'll also be funding a substantial grant north of $1 million to an affordable housing trust fund to assist with the creation and preservation of affordable housing in South Los Angeles. And the benefits program also includes a local and living wage job program. During construction, there'll be a 30% local hire, with 10% of that being for at-risk, as well as during operations, there will be a local hire and living wage requirements. There'll be a $300,000 grant to promote job training, as well as set-asides of 10% of the project's retail space for local small businesses, as well as a revolving loan for small business creation. And if these project benefits are approved as a part of the project is approved, these project benefits will really improve the life of residents, businesses, and workers in South Los Angeles. So with that, I'd just like to note a couple housekeeping items, and then Mr. Milston will conclude. We had 4 requests which are included on a blue sheet that if the project is approved that we would ask that you clarify. And the first is to incorporate the clinic as a part of the project. The second is to approve the project's wrought iron balconies consistent with the project's design, and then 2 items related to reflecting the updated landscaping plan, as well as the sidewalk parkway improvements to give Bureau of Engineering direction on that. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you.
I will be brief, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. George Milston, Latham & Watkins. I know one of the issues that you've raised, Mr. Chairman, is the question of the enforceability of this agreement. We worked very hard to reach an agreement with 11 community groups and 3 council groups. The groups were represented by Public Counsel, Legal Aid, and Jan Chatton Brown law firm. We had offered at the Planning Commission to make these voluntary conditions as part of the conditions of approval. The Commission asked us to make it a private agreement among the parties, which we in fact did do. So we have a written contract between the parties. All the community groups, Legal Aid, Public Counsel, Outside Counsel, NRDC, and all the other groups have signed a contract that is specifically enforceable for compliance with all the conditions that are set forth in the agreement. We believe it is a good agreement. We believe it is an agreement that provides great opportunities for the community. And I would personally note that both Jim Arnone and myself and David Goldberg participated in all those negotiations and are committed to ensuring that this agreement be met, not only to the letter of the agreement, but to the spirit of the agreement. With that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
I don't have any questions at this moment. Maybe later. Any questions, Councilman? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll go through the cards. We have with us, I believe it's Cruz R. Are you here? Fire Safe System, 14547 Sadakoy. Did you want to speak? Then I have Heberto Gomez. Come on up. Just keep your eye on the clock. Give us your 2 minutes. Give us your name and address.
My name is Gennaro Santos. I've been working for Fire Safe Systems for like about 4 years. I live just 1169 East Adams. And what I had to say is, P.H. Palmer has keeping us, busy all these years, always working. And that's what we'd rather be doing. We'd rather be working for the city instead of the city being working for us. I know it's going to be hard, but little by little, it's going to be a more beautiful city, for each of us, for you guys, for us, the workers, and also for the residents. And I guess that's all I have to say for me,
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Heberto Gomez. I work for JW Door Incorporation, and we are subcontracted by G.H. Palmer. This will be like the 5th or 6th project that we have worked for him, and they generate a lot of revenue for our families. We know the impact that it's going to create in the city, as well to the Metro Rail, the families, and the proposal actually for the building of the low-income housing into the project, and restaurants. So this is very good for our company and for all the companies that are working for G.H. Palmer. Thank you.
Thank you. We have several folks, Cruz R., Greg Messick, Arturo Hernandez, I think it's Marlo or Carlo Chavez. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Greg Messick with GJM Engineering. We're a plumbing pipeline contracting firm. We've been doing a lot of the projects for G.H. Palmer for the last 10 years, but one of the things I've been working on this project personally for the last 4 years, I've seen some unique things coming from this. When I saw the rail system being along that property, I just couldn't imagine how nice that was, not only for those those people there, but for kids for school, just the whole community. And like I say, with some of the projects you see downtown, they're fairly isolated, but this one here gives a lot of transport. I like the idea where the community center, the medical center, was inside there to help the people around the area. There's everything in there that you can imagine that would help the people around there. Our business is located in downtown LA, and a lot of the people that work for me, I have about 80% that work here, and I see them using the facilities around LA. We use the facilities in LA. So I just see the benefits of it, and I just hope that you go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speakers, come on up.
Hi, my name is Arturo Hernandez. I work for GJM Engineering. I'm another worker that is get benefits for projects like this, as some others. We're just waiting for. We're ready for this job, so we're ready for improvements for the city. I have worked on another projects as this one, and I know these are beneficial for the workers, beneficial for community, and it's just another building that makes the city pretty, as it's getting pretty, and hopefully we get the approvals for to start working on it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Chavez. This job is very important to me because it's how I provide my family. It's not easy to find a job nowadays. And this project will give me and other of my coworkers an opportunity to work. This project will allow me and others to continue providing for our families. It will also provide housing for many people who are in need for a home. For these reasons, I strongly support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Roman Guijarro, I believe, Ann Williams, Dave Melick, Ramiro Suarez. Roman Guijarro, are you here? Please.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Ann Williams with the Central City Association. As you know, CCA is a business advocacy association whose 450 members employ over 350,000 people in the Los Angeles region. CCA is committed to transforming downtown into a vibrant, thriving community, and an essential part of accomplishing that goal is to bring smart economic development and redevelopment to downtown and its surrounding communities. So we strongly support the project before you today for several reasons. First, the proposed development will create badly needed construction jobs during this recession and help jumpstart the local economy with work that is ready to go forward right now. Second, the project adheres to recent city policy efforts encouraging high-density mixed-use projects near transit, and in fact, it would be the first transit-oriented development in South LA, I believe. Third, affordable housing will be provided without subsidy to very low-income families, and most notably, it will be accomplished without relocating a single person out of their residence. We're enthusiastic in our support, and we think that this project will be an asset to the community starting today and for decades to come. Well, we urge you to grant the approvals being requested by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll call out Roman Guijarro. Are you here? Can move on. Dave Melick. Ramiro Suarez. Ramiro, you here? Then we have Tomas G. Jaimes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ramiro Suarez. I work for J. Drywall. I wasn't ready for this. I don't have a speech. All I'm going to say is I support the project. It employs a lot of workers, and we are open to train residents of the area if we have this project. I will support this project. Thank you.
Thank you much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Tomas, and I work for Certified Service, the heating and air conditioning company. And I'm here to say, we're trying to see if we can get the approval for the building, because we're like 20 workers that we depend from this type of project. And we're not just 20 workers that we work for the air conditioning company. It's our family too. The ones are on the necessary of the building, because we are the ones who bring our food to our table. And plus, beside the air conditioning company, there's like many other companies that there have like over 2,000 workers that we are looking to get this type of project, because we've been busy for the last 15 years from GH Palmer, because they are the ones who are building this type of buildings, and that's the way we are keeping our family going. So if we don't get the approval for this type of project, that means we're going to be looking for another job, and you know how hard it is right now. There's people like driving from all the way from San Bernardino all the way to Los Angeles, because there is nothing out there, and they drive all the way to here to find a job. And if we don't get this approved, then who else we're going to go, So I would like to say thanks for listening to us, and thank you.
Just curious, is that a union logo on your T-shirt? Yeah.
This is our logo of the company.
Okay. Thank you. Savio K. Woods.
Good afternoon. I actually have a letter that I'd like to submit. I'm sorry I didn't get an opportunity to submit that, but
Okay.
So I'm here today with community health councils and with respect to all of the workers who have come to talk about the need for construction jobs and the need to make money and feed their families. I'm here today to actually oppose the planned Lorenzo project at 2300 Flower and ask that this committee go no further than to modify the current Q designation on the site to allow for housing in combination with a health or medical use on the site. The loss of this zoning designation is a missed opportunity for the city, particularly the residents of South Los Angeles. The zoning of this parcel for health-related use is one of the few tools at your disposal to provide for health and medical emergency needs of the community. Though the city isn't responsible for healthcare services, the city has shown that it embraces its responsibility for the health and well-being of its residents by addressing items that affect our health, such as noise, pollution, access to healthy food options, and other areas. We request the city to go further and provide any and all policy assistance to preserve existing and increase the number of healthcare resources accessible to residents in all areas of the city of Los Angeles, particularly for the residents of South Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And our last speaker is Ms. Ramsey.
Hi, good afternoon. Marie Ramsey here with Councilwoman Perry's office. And I'm here to express support for this project. It has been a long process. We've been working with the applicant for approximately 2 years. They've been receptive to design issues. They've been receptive to community issues, and they were able to reach an agreement, which does provide for a couple of key things. One is local hire, and that is being coordinated through PB Jobs, so we feel very confident about that. And the second is a space agreement with St. John's Health Clinic in the facility for, I believe, 7,500 square feet of space, rent-free for 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, I think that concludes our public comment cards. Did you submit a card?
Excuse me, I did submit a card. My name is Serena Lynn with Public Counsel Law Center. May I be heard as to the Lorenzo project?
Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair Reyes and council members Huizar and Krikorian. I am Serena Lynn with the Public Counsel Law Center, and I'm here today to express the support of the Unidad community groups for the Community Benefits Agreement and the Lorenzo project. Mr. Palmer has worked extensively with the community to address concerns about the Lorenzo project, and we applaud the Community Benefits Agreement between the applicant and a coalition of 11 Unidad community groups to provide significant benefits to the South Los Angeles community. Our coalition of community groups consists of Coalition for Responsible Community Development, Community Development Technology Center, Esperanza Community Housing Corporation, Trust South LA, Natural Resources Defense Council, Playa Vista Job Opportunities and Business Services, Strategic Actions for a Just Economy, St. Francis Center, St. John's Well Child and Family Center, United University Church, and Vermont Village Community Development Corporation. This community benefits agreement was negotiated between attorneys. We assure you that it is utterly enforceable, and it is a private agreement, and we took a lot of care to making sure that it was enforceable. The CBA includes benefits that address community health, affordable housing, jobs, small business creation, and transit-oriented development. We are especially delighted that the Lorenzo project will now include a 7,500 square foot community serving health center, which will be operated by St. John's Well Child and Family Center. The center will be located in the Lorenzo on the ground floor along the 23rd Street frontage. The applicant has agreed to design and build out the space at no cost, providing the space rent-free for 20 years and to provide funding for operational startup costs, medical equipment, and community health promotion. This coalition is also pleased that the Lorenzo contains 5% affordable housing for very low-income residents and additional funds to create and preserve affordable housing in South Los Angeles. The CBA also provides for a local and at-risk jobs hiring program for the project's construction workers and a living wage and local hiring program for the project's permanent workers. In addition, Mr. Palmer has agreed to provide funds for job training, discounted space in the project reserved for South LA small businesses, and the development of transit-oriented strategies in South Los Angeles. The Unidad Coalition believes that these benefits will improve the quality of life for residents, businesses, and workers in and around South Los Angeles, and we appreciate the applicant's efforts to work with the community to bring these medical and other needed benefits to the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, understanding the complexity of these agreements that are private,
Yes.
Yet we're being asked to re-entitle and promote a zone change that speaks to benefits. Are any of these, if the city needed to enforce, are they enforceable from the city's point of view?
Well,
Given what we have in front of us.
Yes, if I understand what you're saying, first of all, I would separate the community agreements from the zone change and general plan amendment requests before you. Those you do in your legislative capacity, and either you approve those or deny them based on findings acceptable to the planning department and recommended by them. But as far as these private community benefits agreements, in general, those would be enforceable by the parties to those agreements. I haven't seen those. I haven't reviewed them. I have seen in other instances where the city enters into a development agreement which the city is a party to and which, of course, the city could enforce. But I can't comment further than that on these because I haven't seen them.
Okay. Well, given the complexity of these issues and knowing how there is so much that's being weighed upon the discretion of this committee, I would hope that the applicant and the representatives could understand. I've yet to see a real understanding of what are the value, the dollar values, community benefit packages, and what that actually means to these different stakeholders. And so from my point of view, at this juncture, I did see some fairly elaborate narrative as to the agreements, but how that translates into real dollars for these different elements of this agreement is yet, I don't know. I just don't know. So at this juncture, my tendency would be to continue this for 1 week so I can sit down and understand this better, get a clear understanding of how these agreements are actually going to perform, how are they enforceable, and I don't think that's something that is irrational to ask given the complexity and the value and the volume of what's being asked of this city. But that is my tendency at this point, Councilmember. Any comments or observations?
I don't think I've heard any reason to suggest that the matter is so time sensitive that a week's continuance would be problematic. And if that's the chair's desire, I'm happy to support that. I would like to ask a question or two, if I may, of planning staff, especially related to the community benefits. One of the concerns I had was that whether the change in zoning and the general plan amendment to remove the existing health care queue condition, would that change in any way the operation of the existing health care facility on the site? Would the existing hospital be able to continue operation in exactly the way that it is now?
First of all, the existing healthcare facility was the orthopedic hospital. They shut down several years back and moved off the site. But there is currently a new orthopedic funded medical facility, pediatric orthopedic medical facility on the site. And it is currently operating and can continue to operate even under the new zone.
Right. So, and are you aware of any other proposals of projects that for new health facilities that could have the potential of going into this site?
Not that we are aware of, and that portion of the site has been vacant for quite some time.
For a very long time. So you have an existing healthcare facility that's continuing to operate. You have no current proposals or the likelihood of current proposals for new healthcare facilities that would go onto that site. And you have a community benefits agreement that, if it is enforceable, would actually expand healthcare services to the community by adding a new clinic to be operated by St. John's with 20 years rent-free operation. Is that a fair summary of the healthcare aspects of this?
Just for the record, as far as the planning department and the city planning commission is concerned, the public benefit was just something that we haven't deliberated. It's not in our file as we speak today. So beyond what the city attorney's opinion is, we don't have any other position as far as that issue is concerned. In terms of the queue condition that was imposed on the property, planning department would treat that queue condition, removal or not removal, as a typical zone change.
Okay.
On its merit and its findings.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question,
Please.
Mr. Milston?
Yes, I was going to ask him to come to the
Mr.
microphone.
Goldberg? Yeah, Mr.
Thank you.
Milston, if you would.
And he's itching to come to the mic, so I want to make sure he gets there.
Thank you very much, honorable council members. If I can, one is, if this is the committee's desire to continue this for a week so that we can share specifically, we need the consent of public counsel to that process. But let me be very clear that this agreement provides very substantial benefits in the tunes of many millions of dollars, which are specifically enforceable by public counsel and the community groups. The funding is also tied to a series of discrete points in the process, such as the approval of the project, issuance of permits at various stages of the process. So every dollar and every commitment is tied to a specific performance target within the agreement. Lastly, I'd like to point out is that we are actually planning to start construction in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We understand your need and desire to make sure that this agreement is enforceable. We'll work with you. We would hope we can come back to this committee if it's your desire to delay it for a week so that we can stay on track to be at the City Council within a couple of weeks. If that is at all possible, Mr. Reyes. And
Mr. Wilson, but let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Given the point you just made, if the imminent need to perform because of construction is where it's at, why wouldn't we want to inform why wouldn't we want to have documents in the file that speak to the enforceability of this agreement?
If I can, Mr. Reyes, at the Planning Commission, we offered to include it as voluntary conditions as part of the Planning Commission process, and the Council at the Planning Commission indicated that was not appropriate from their standpoint. So we were prepared to do that at the Planning Commission, and it was indicated that they, in fact, preferred and recommended and requested that we go out and execute a private agreement and make that privately enforceable. If this commission is concerned about the enforceability of this agreement, we are prepared, if public council concurs, to provide a covenant to the city that we will enforce the agreement and make that a covenant with the city. So we certainly have no problem with that if that is something that would ensure that there is enforceability of this agreement. So I would make that recommendation as a possibility.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Milston, who are the parties to the cooperation agreement who would have standing to enforce it?
I'm going to have Jim Arnone, my partner, and Serena Lynn from Public Counsel approach, if I can, and let them describe it very specifically to you.
Jim Arnone of Latham & Watkins. The parties are the Coalition for Responsible Community Development. It's 11 community groups who are together represented by Public Counsel, Legal Aid, and the law firm of Chatton Brown and Karstens. And there are the 11 people who Serena Lynn read when she read her testimony. She handed me the list, and I could read them if you'd like.
You don't need to read them again, but okay. Any one of those entities independently would have standing to be able to enforce this cooperation agreement.
I think we did it that each and every one of them has independent standing to enforce. Do you concur?
Yes, each and every organization that I listed is an individual signatory, and each of them has an individual private right of action to enforce the community benefits agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I don't want to be an obstructionist, but I witnessed since 1988 what did or didn't happen in Central City West from the bigger picture point of view, not including any specific cases, but just the bigger picture point of view, and that is why you're witnessing my posture on this position in this complex agreement, and I do appreciate that 1 week.
And we would be comfortable providing to the satisfaction of a city attorney a covenant to ensure the enforcement of the agreement. And we could work that out between now and council. I believe we could, if that would be satisfactory, yes. We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so it continues 1 week, and we'll move forward. Thank you very much. And our next item, Roberto?
Next item, council members, would be item 6. This is an appeal by Doug Haynes from the La Mirada Neighborhood Association. He's being represented by Mr. Silverstein of the Silverstein Law Firm. Has to do with various entitlements that were approved by the CPC as it relates to a tract map, a ZA's adjustment, and a site plan review for a 20-story mixed-use development with 176 condominiums in CD 13.
Which item is it again?
Item 6, Councilman.
Okay. Do you have staff here on item 6?
Good afternoon, community members. My name is Jay Kim, and I was the hearing officer on this case. And the case before you is, there are 2 cases that are incidental to the proposed project. One is the second level of appeal for the tract map that was initially approved, appealed, reapproved by the commission, and it is appealed before you, the council. And the other portion is the CPC case, which included the zone change and height district change, a zoning administrator's adjustment for yard reduction and site plan review. However, the zone change and the height district change are not part of this appeal because it was a recommendation by the commission before the council. So just to note on that. Some of the main points that the appellant is making, the La Mirada Association, is that the Deputy Advisory Agency and consequently the City Planning Commission consequently erred and abused in approving the project. And essentially the overall points are that the project is too big and too tall for the site, and that the project is not compatible with the surrounding uses. However, on this site, currently the land use designation is regional center with under the Hollywood Community Plan that has a footnote that allows for 4.5 to 1 FAR, and the applicant is asking for that 4.5 to 1 FAR to make it consistent with the existing land use planning. Even though the zone change and the height district change is not before you today, it is also tied to the project and the track map. So staff believes that it is consistent with what is allowed, and there are other high-rises in the area in Hollywood, so we believe that it is consistent with and compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. And the other point that the appellant brings up is that there will be substantial impact on the adjacent Music Box Henry Fonda Theater, which is
You get the last point because the door keeps slamming and I didn't hear you. Go ahead.
One of the other points that the appellant is making is that there will be substantial impact on the adjacent Henry Fonda Music Box Theater, which is right next door to the site. It is not historic in that it's not historically designated per the city, but there are historic elements, and this per sequa we're treating as if it is historic. There are impacts that have been identified per the EIR that was done on the project, and specifically noise and construction, but there have been mitigation measures incorporated to reduce the impacts and also monitor the construction of the project in order to reduce it to a less than significant impacts, and that's we believe that has been addressed. One of the other points is the yard adjustment, in other words, the yard reduction for the residential portion of the project, which is just the tower. This is a mixed-use ground floor retail, there's parking above ground, and there's a 16-floor residential tower above the 4-story parking podium. And this is a technical request in that if it were a commercial use, an office tower, no yard requirement, no yard is required on the site. In other words, they could pull it by right up to the property line. However, because this is a mixed use, the applicant has to ask for a yard reduction for the residential portion. And in urban settings, this is common, and this is common plan and practice, and staff feel that the findings were made appropriately. One of the other points is that there's not enough parking in Hollywood, and this point was brought up throughout the hearing process. This is an existing surface parking lot, I believe around 170 parking spaces, and the project is replacing a parking lot, as well as there's parking lots that are being reduced throughout Hollywood. As you know, there are developments occurring. And as such, as part of our recommendation to the commission, and in the commission approving the case, they have increased their commercial parking to 5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet rather than 2 per 1,000. This is in the CRA area, and they get a benefit of less. But the applicant has agreed to provide more. And in terms of the residential, they're providing 1.5 parking spaces per unit, in addition to a quarter guest parking space per unit. And that is above the code requirement, but less than the citywide parking policy per the Deputy Advisory Agency, which we believe that is appropriate for a high-density urban area. There are other items that the appellant has brought up, especially some of the unavoidable impacts as part of the EIR. Their traffic, land use, public services, aesthetics, views to the Hollywood sign, so forth. Those items we believe have been addressed, and an overriding consideration statement was adopted as part of that EIR, and staff is recommending denial of that appeal. And as a note, staff has also provided supplemental findings in response to the appeal before you. I can answer any questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you, sir. Any questions for the staff? Okay. Okay, so we'll come back to you if we have any questions. So let's hear from the appellant. I believe on record we have Doug Haynes, our representatives. Please introduce yourself for the record, sir.
Certainly. Good afternoon, council members. Daniel Wright of the Silverstein Law Firm, 315 North Marengo, 3rd floor, Pasadena 91101. On behalf of the La Mirado Avenue Association of Hollywood, let the record reflect that I have turned into the city clerk our appeal comment letter and project objection letter and 9 attached exhibits, which you should have a copy in front of you. Our experts, Richard Platkin and Charles Fisher, have separately submitted for the record additional evidence and expert opinion, and their testimony will address the specific areas of expertise. I know here we have 2 minutes, but since I'm representing the appellant...
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
We'll give it more time.
I will leave for your consideration our detailed comments and evidence regarding the merits of the project findings, because the bulk of my time today will be spent to explain to the committee why, as a matter of fundamental due process and fairness, you must continue this hearing a minimum of 2 weeks due to the misconduct of the applicants. My detailed comments are pulled from sections 2 and 3 of the detailed comment letter that the city clerk has placed before you. Let the record reflect that on April 7th, the applicant's land use consultant, Craig Lawson, urged the Plum Committee to, quote, adopt the supplemental findings as provided by the Planning Department. And I see that Mr. Krikorian is looking at that briefing book. If you look at the letter dated the 7th, you'll see that phrase repeated over and over, adopt the supplemental findings. However, nowhere in the administrative record had the applicant or the Planning Department staff submitted to the Plum Committee and officially put into the administrative record through the city clerk any proposed supplemental findings. Ever since the original hearing on April 12th was continued to today, our law office has requested an opportunity to review and respond to these elusive supplemental findings to no avail. They've not been made available to us. We made inquiries with the Councilman Garcetti's office on 2 occasions, on the 14th and the 19th, and we talked to Mr. Espinoza on the 19th. None of them knew or were aware of any supplemental findings being submitted to the city clerk and put into the city council file. Only last Friday, due to the diligence of our community representative, Doug Haynes, did the planning staff concede that Mr. Lawson had submitted the proposed supplemental findings to the planning department, quote, as a courtesy. These proposed supplemental findings were submitted either in electronic or written form or both, and for the last 3 weeks, the city planning department staff has had access to 2 different sets of supplemental findings, and this is the one-sided version of them. One of them was for the tract map was 139 pages, and it's the opposite. For the city planning case, it was 139 pages, and in support of the tract map, it was 110 pages of proposed supplemental findings. Only then, last Friday, did we obtain these by essentially demanding them from the planning department staff. At that time, the department planning staff told us that these findings were not going to be their findings and that they had no intention of submitting them to the record. However, today when we arrived at the hearing, these 2 sets of proposed findings that are substantially identical, a few pages shorter than the original ones, were handed to us, and they now apparently will be the supplemental findings that the planning department, as the planner indicated, are going to place before you. This is nothing but a sandbagging. It is a violation of fundamental due process of law that hundreds and hundreds of pages of supplemental findings have been prepared by the applicant And it's clear the way the letter was written on April 7th that Lawson's intent was to make it seem like the planning department had prepared these findings and that they would have been submitted on April 12th had the hearing gone forward, and our client would have had no opportunity to respond to it. It would have placed into the record all kinds of information. I want to draw to your attention one item in particular. On page 34...
So, right? Can we start concluding? Because I think I can let you go for 3 hours if I let you.
I bet. Okay. Well, let me give you one particularly egregious example. Page 34 of the tract map.
With a big smile.
Yes. Page 34. It says that in the findings that there's now substantial. Oops, it's no longer 34. It was 34 on the first set. It's now on page 30 of the Planning Department's supplemental findings, that there's now substantial evidence showing that Hirsch Green Transportation Consulting prepared a March 28, 2011 report and provided by the applicant compiling parking utilization data, and that study constitutes evidence in the record why the parking utilization reduction granted by the advisory agency is adequate. Council members, we have never seen that study. We have not been given an opportunity to controvert it. And consistent with the case law of Clark versus City of Hermosa Beach, we are entitled by the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution of California to controvert evidence that's going to go into this record. It's an unfair hearing, and we need, you should grant a continuance at a minimum of 2 weeks so that, and require the applicant to put everything into the record so that we can have a fair hearing. What happened here is that they tried to go through the back door by giving it to the planning department and not giving it to the city clerk so it would go into the council file, and that's not fair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Doug Haynes. So that was your representative, correct?
It was. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm Doug Haynes of the Lamrod Avenue Neighborhood Association, and I'll try to be very brief. First, I want to thank Jay Kim for providing the findings. It's been very confusing to us. We were looking for those findings, and we didn't know where they were. And on Friday, Jay did provide the draft that was submitted by Craig Lawson, so I do appreciate that he did. It's kind of a surprise to have these new findings dumped on us today, because now we don't have a chance to respond to them, but it helped on Friday to at least have a weekend to go over it. This appeal is really about what this project brings to Hollywood. And in the past, we've been frustrated by other projects that have come in and haven't offered anything, but they've modified their development to try to conform to what the neighbors would like. In this case, we've had a lot of meetings with the applicants' representatives, and there really hasn't been anything that's conformed to what the neighbors have wanted. They've reduced the residential parking. They mentioned that they increased commercial parking, but they took away the residential parking, more of the residential parking, to put in commercial. There's a 30% reduction from the required advisory agency standards for a condominium, and it says right in your agenda, 176 residential condominiums. This is a condominium or a condominium conversion at some point. So to underpark our area is exactly what we don't need. Also, it's a parking podium instead of a subterranean garage. All these other developments have come in with subterranean parking, and this is a massive 145,000 square feet podium right next to the Music Box Theater. It's 270 feet on Hollywood Boulevard, where it has a historic height limitation of 150 feet, and the W Hotel project conformed with the 150-foot height limitation. Jay mentioned other developments coming in. The Boulevard 6200 project will be 55 feet to 85 feet, and the community supported that wholeheartedly. So all we're asking as the applicant, just change it. There's no affordable housing. This is a massive luxury development with no affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Robert Blue. Then we'll have Charles Fisher. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I have sat and attended some of the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council meetings. I'm on the Planning and Land Use Committee of the Neighborhood Council, and I was on the past chair. Today, during that time, it had been presented many times. The changes were in the rendering, but not the key zoning requirements or building envelope. The applicant's proposing a maximum build-out alternative, and that's not wise or justified. It's basically being built out on a false premise. I submitted for the administrative record the 2010 census. It was prepared by the area manager of the Los Angeles region, and it includes the Hollywood Studio District, and it also includes a census tract that this project is going to be located in. And there's actually a net reduction. So there's no reason to be granting any, some of the key issues is a height district change, as Mr. Haynes mentioned earlier. And as Mr. Kim mentioned, he talked about the height is in conformance. It's actually not. He compared skyscrapers nearby or buildings nearby, but as was mentioned, the W Hotel is conforming to the original height district. And Boulevard 6200 is actually an excellent example of a project that got massive support from 3 or 4 neighborhood councils in the area. I remember writing the letter for that. And one of the reasons was it voluntarily complied. It had 10% affordable housing without any subsidies, amenities like that. So the other thing I'm concerned about is sometimes I think there's a fairness issue that a developer can actually write the findings or something that's very questionable. At least, anyway, let's see. I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Charles Fisher.
Good afternoon, Charlie Fisher, 140 South Avenue 57, Highland Park.
Is that the 55 getting worked on Avenue 50? Is that the 55 getting worked on Avenue 50?
55?
Yeah, the 55 Chevrolet you have, the wagon?
Yeah, it's being worked on.
Okay.
Getting a new paint job.
I want to make sure it's the same one, that's all.
It'll be done soon, hopefully.
Go ahead.
What I came to talk about basically is I was asked to look at the impacts on the historic resources of this particular project. And of course, it did deal in the documents with the impacts on both the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Henry Fonda Theater, which granted the Henry Fonda Theater is not a listed HCM, but it certainly meets the qualifications as an HCM. Hopefully it will be nominated soon and become one. What I did see, though, there was a little more than just these 2 buildings. Hollywood Boulevard in general, because you have a height limit, that 150-foot height limit, that every building previously has adhered to. The report cites, and it was cited this afternoon, many of the other tall buildings in the area. The report cites some historic buildings, such as the Taft Building, the Broadway Building, the Capitol Tower, which is nearby on Vine Street. These buildings, along with the W, all comply and are shorter. They are the icons of Hollywood. They're the buildings when the tourists come to Hollywood and they see the larger-than-life Grauman's Chinese Theater, they see these larger-than-life buildings, the Pandages Theater that's nearby this particular site, they are taken in by the size of these buildings. What we have here is a change that is going to bring in a much higher height to this new structure that's going to overpower these historic buildings. And yes, this is just one site, but then the next one comes, the next one comes. It's a slippery slope that we come into. In my letter that I hope you have a copy of, otherwise I have some copies right here, I cited the movie Blade Runner, because I think Blade Runner is very appropriate here. In 1980, that movie served as a warning of what's going to happen if we're not careful. And I didn't get into the super graphics, but the super graphics are also very prominent in that film.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bill Zaid.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bill Zaid. I live in the area. I'm also a board member of the Hollywood Studio Neighborhood Council. I also worked for the census last year in capacity as a recruiter and a crew leader, and was up for a field operations supervisor position, which I turned down. and I'm also a manager of a landmark apartment building, so I know the area quite well from a street level. And I'm here because I'm more or less concerned that this is somewhat ill-conceived at best in terms of parking, economics, density. The population has actually decreased, which we saw at a street level as is reported in this specific report. And long-term economically, it makes very little sense. The W, which is nearby, has 147 units. It has sold 10. Luxury condos, there are several other examples. In every case, they have trouble selling them, yet we're building 20 stories and 176 units. This seems, based on the model they use, going to lead to an economic boondoggle because they won't be able to sell them at the price they need to actually make their money back. Additionally, if we look at what the neighborhood requires, and I saw this at street level, again, it's affordable housing, it's other economic issues, it's not, unfortunately, luxury condos. So architecturally, you can add to that the point that this is interesting, but not really, they're calling it the gateway to Hollywood, a premier building that would be worth this size and effort. So I would just say to consider this in the light of what is really needed both for the neighborhood and what is economically sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dale Goldsmith, then Bert Nelson. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, honorable committee members. Dale Goldsmith with Armbruster Goldsmith and Delvac representing the applicant.
Oh, okay.
I could go now or I could go after the rest.
Why don't you wait? Because could not tell by the card, so I'll be asking you guys to come back. Bert Nelson, and then Ziggy Cruz.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of the Music Box, 6126 Hollywood Boulevard, one of the owners and partners. I appreciate all the goodwill being spoken on our behalf. It's a little unfounded in the fact that we've been meeting with the developers for the last 3 years in trying to help them with the development of this project. We've been working with different community members in doing so. They've been nothing but gracious and understanding in our role as a theater, as an entertainment venue. They understand the dynamics of that venue and it being historic or on the list of historic venues. We understand that development is a key necessity in Hollywood, and we're looking for the right partners to be next door. So much so that, there's talk about sub-parking, podium parking. They looked at the podium parking in an effort to try to help us because they know we have a rooftop patio. Their parking would be adjacent to our rooftop parking so that it's not residents, but it's parking. I do think that, I don't get into the politics of, who's slinging mud on what. I just think that these guys are working really, really diligently to come up with a project that fits. It's business, it's commerce, development's going to happen, and these are good partners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ziggy Cruz.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ziggy Cruz. I'm a resident stakeholder in Hollywood. I just want to point out the graphic that the developer brought in basically shows the scale of the current buildings that is there and the outside of their building, how tall it's going to be, and how hard it will be for people to see the Hollywood sign, the Hollywood Hills. I don't know if you can see it from the angle where you're sitting, but it's clear to that angle there. It's like twice the size of everything else, sometimes even triple. Having that said, your agenda shows that there was no community impact statement submitted. I'd like to correct that. The Hollywood City District Neighborhood Council submitted its impact statement just previously before the last meeting from April, which was continued until today. Also, I don't know if you received it, the HSDNC had submitted, I'm not a board member, but I have a letter of it, what they submitted as a correction. where they simply say the Hollywood City District Neighborhood Council voted to take the recommendation of our Plum Committee and strongly recommends denial of the proposed project at 6104 Hollywood Boulevard unless the following conditions are met. That 2.5 parking spaces per residential units be provided with no exceptions, no signage above the third floor be approved, and that no digital or super graphics be approved. Obviously, they intend to have super graphics, and the parking has not improved. Again, having said that, this project seems to be nice in some eyes. It seems to be humongous and just monstrous in some other eyes. I don't like to take a position. I just like to have you heard the appellant and maybe even go with the request from the attorney. Having heard what he had to say earlier really makes me hope that you council members would say, let's continue this item for a couple of weeks, give everybody a new opinion to look at what was submitted to the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Nicole Shahanian? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. Shahanian.
Great.
Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, which represents nearly 1,000 businesses in the Hollywood area, I'm here to urge your support of the Hanover Company project at 6100 Hollywood Boulevard. The Hollywood and Gower development would serve as a gateway project demonstrating an innovative and effective use of limited space available. Replacing a parking lot with a functional multi-use development would serve as an inspiration for future revitalization efforts in Hollywood and demonstrates how to update the community without sacrificing the historic splendor of the area. The Hollywood and Gower building's practical purposes would be far more beneficial than the current parking lot. The new construction would add 176 residential units, which would be highly effective in continuing to meet the demand for housing spurred by the recent revitalization of Hollywood. It would also provide new retail space, thereby activating the street front and encouraging pedestrian traffic. Additionally, according to the plan, the building would provide a unique public art component. The project design includes the painting of a mural at pedestrian levels, which would contribute to aesthetic enhancement of the Hollywood area, as well as pay homage to the stars located immediately adjacent on the historic Hollywood Walk of Fame. Given the current economic difficulties faced by the city and its residents, the Chamber believes we should all be supportive of projects like this. The Hanover project will create hundreds of new jobs for our residents, both permanent and construction, while simultaneously contributing several $million annually to the tax revenue of the city. We understand that there is a 40% unemployment rate in many of our construction and building trades, and that the jobs created with this project are sorely needed. Time is of the essence. If we continue to delay projects that will bring much-needed jobs to our community, then we aren't fulfilling our responsibility to Angelenos. The time to act is now. The Hollywood Chamber strongly urges you to move forward with this project without delay.
Thank you very much. We do have a card that was in another stack. Mr. Richard Plotkin, if I may say, a former city employee as well. Mr. Plotkin?
Hi, I'm Richard Plotkin, a land use consultant for the La Mirada Neighborhood Association of Hollywood, speaking in behalf of their appeal. I've reviewed the supplementary comments submitted by Craig Lawson and Associates, as well as the original appeals, and I would like to argue that they do not meet the requirement of findings to be consistent with the general plan of the City of Los Angeles. And I should add that one of my areas of expertise was having been part of the team that prepared the general plan framework element. This element is clearly and unambiguously a growth-neutral document, and I quote all of the relevant sections of the general plan on that regard. This means that to be growth-inducing, you have to make clear arguments, and the argument is that the zoning and the plan designations of an area are no longer sufficient based on substantial gains in housing and population that have outstripped an area. If you look at pages 5 and 6 of the testimony that I submitted, you'll see that this is not the case whatsoever. If you look at page 5, you'll see that the framework itself, based on 1990 data, made projections of what would happen in Hollywood, not at the census tract level, as Bob Blue said, but of the entire community plan area, and there has not been the growth that the framework presented. Now, if you look at page 6, I did a quick spreadsheet looking at the latest 2010 census data, and I looked at the CRA area, also called the Hollywood Community Studio Study Area, and you can see in this area in the last 10 years, there has been a population decline of nearly 3,000 people. So there's no data whatsoever to support the claim that we need to increase density to meet population gain. It's exactly the opposite. The findings turn the framework on its head. It's saying we need to induce growth to meet the general plan's goals. In fact, it's the opposite. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to ask you on that note, do you know the size per square mile or population density per square mile during those time frames that you cite?
It can be computed. I can get the
I'd be curious to see what that density level
that data. But if the population has gone down, then the density has gone down. I mean, it's axiomatic.
I think the question is, where does the density at that point?
Well, if you look at, the studio study area is exactly the CRA area of this core, so that's where the population declined. So the population density and the population numbers have declined by 8% over the last decade. It should have increased in the area of 30 or 40 or 50% to justify increases in height districts and increases in floor area ratios. So the idea that you need to have a growth-inducing project to meet the goals of the general plan it's in total contradiction of the general plan, and it turns it on its head. That's my argument.
Thank you, Mr. Packerman. So we have Jessica Packerman, and then we have Dale Goldsmith. So who wants to come up first? I know you're both representing the applicant, and then we'll have the council office to conclude.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Jessica Packerman. I'm with Craig Lawson and Company, representing the applicant 6104 Hollywood. I'm pleased to join you today to discuss this exciting new mixed-use project in Hollywood. I want to thank Jim Tokunaga and Jay Kim in planning for their hard work on these cases. We submitted an updated briefing book to you this afternoon since our continued hearing on April 7th, which contains detailed information about the proposed project and the requested entitlements. I want to briefly highlight that we have been working on this proposal since late 2007 and have been working very closely with the community groups, stakeholders, and Council President Eric Garcetti's office since. We've held several meetings with 3 neighborhood councils in the area, including Hollywood Studio District, and have met with the Hollywood Design Review Advisory Committee several times before they ultimately approved the final design in 2009. If you refer to Section 3 of your books, you'll see a detailed summary of our community outreach efforts, and Section 4 demonstrates just how much this project has evolved over time based on the community input. This is including the former board members of the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council, Planning and Land Use Committee, who strongly supported the new design. We have strong support from our neighbors next door at the Music Box, as well as the Hollywood Chamber. I just want to close by stating that this site, which is a regional center commercial site, is the most intense land use designation found in the city. And the fact that this site is located near a public transit station makes it an appropriate location for a transit-oriented, high-rise mixed-use project such as this one. The requested zone and height district change, which is also before you today, is consistent with the property's underlying zoning under the community plan, and notably is consistent with the pending Hollywood Community Plan update, which is recommending a 4.5 to 1 FAR on mixed-use projects. I urge you to approve the requested zone and height district change and deny the appeals, and our legal counsel, Dale Goldsmith, is also here to respond to the appeals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, for the record, Dale Goldsmith. Good afternoon, honorable committee members. I'd like to first commend Jay Kim for the excellent presentation he gave to you. I do want to confirm, or have him confirm, that the zone change and the height district change are before you as legislative acts. I wasn't certain when he gave his presentation whether that was clear. However, there's no signage before you. Signage requires a takedown, and our client doesn't have a takedown, so we don't know whether there'll be signage, or if it does come, it'll come later. Also, I want to respond very briefly to Mr. Wright's allegations of misconduct. We categorically reject it. I find it ironic that he was shedding crocodile tears today about sandbagging when he himself dumped a rather voluminous tome in front of you only a few minutes before the hearing. I guess I'll leave it at that and let you judge whether sandbagging, who is sandbagging whom. With respect to the allegations of insufficient parking, first and foremost, the project is an apartment project. Hanover is an apartment developer. Their financing partner requires the condo map as a condition for financing, but Hanover develops apartments and operates apartments and will operate this as an apartment. Regarding the allegation of insufficient parking, I want to make it clear that the parking exceeds the code requirement at 1.75 to 1. It includes a quarter space of guest parking, which is not required under the code. The project did seek, and the Planning Commission approved, a deviation from the advisor agency's parking policy. It's a policy, it's not an ordinance. The city decision makers have the ability to grant exceptions. They did so in this case based on exceptional circumstances, including the proximity of the project to amenities and the Red Line station. In addition, the project exceeds the ULI demand, which is about 1.65. It exceeds the experience of Hanover in managing over 50,000 units. There will be plenty of parking. Regarding Mr. Fisher's comment about a 150-foot height limit in Hollywood, there is none. The height is unlimited. That's very clear under the zoning. And this project, as the staff noted, is consistent with many of these existing and proposed developments in the area and ones that have been approved. Finally, with respect to view blockages of the Hollywood Hills, the EIR includes an extensive view sim analysis that shows there's no significant impact. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Now, I had closed the public hearing and several cards were submitted. So I'll just read your name into the record to reaffirm that you were here for the hearing. But if I don't close the public hearings and cards keep coming in, I'll never get the hearings done. So, Ms. Jennifer Moran, I want to thank you for coming down. So I'm going to close the public hearing and I apologize. Well, why don't you give us 1 minute, because you made the trip way out here, and we already dealt with number 9, and I don't think anybody else, so we'll make an exception.
My name is Jennifer Moran. I'm a Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council member. I'm also an East Hollywood Neighborhood Council member. I'm here to oppose the project in discussion right now. The main reason that hasn't already been discussed thoroughly, I feel, is parking. That's the number one thing that people come to neighborhood councils to complain about. And I feel like I wouldn't be doing a good job of representing the people that I'm a board member for if I didn't tell you that lowering the parking by any amount below 2.5 parking per unit is really unacceptable to the people who live in that area. And I also think that having above ground parking where you alienate pedestrians doesn't really make sense if you're trying to say that this is close to the Red Line and it's going to be a walking friendly kind of environment, because that creates an alienating environment. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the trip. And our last speaker, the representative of the council office. Nope. Not at this moment. And that during the committee. They call this a semi-judicious process. Sir.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Marcel Porras, Senior Planning and Economic Development Deputy for Council President Garcetti. I'm here to support this project and ask that the committee deny the appeal. Located at the eastern starting point of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, this development will serve as a strong gateway to Hollywood from the east at what is currently a surface parking lot. Innovative in that it unbundles parking, provides robust bicycle parking, and is adjacent to a major bus corridor and rail station. This mixed-use project is designed in a manner that promotes walking, transit use, and bicycling. The project team has provided community outreach and engaged in a thoughtful discussion regarding this project with not just our office, but with community members through the design aspect as well, with the Hollywood Heritage, and then also with the Office of Historic Resources. Also, we feel that with the future development of that corridor as well, with Boulevard 6200, completing the pedestrian walkway to the transit corridor, and also with the amount of housing and parking space that project will provide as well, the accessibility to transit and the strengthening of overall travel options such as biking and car sharing that are already in Hollywood and providing and strengthening travel options. We believe that the height and density
Well,
of
you
the project...
talk fast.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Must be a trait of the council office.
I know you want to get out of here, Councilmember. So
throw it to third gear.
I guess one of the things we also hear a lot about the parking woes of all of our community members. It's a big issue. We know that our city staff is backlogged with trying to get preferential parking districts. The way the budgets hit staff, I think we hear that loud and clear as a council office as well. We're also working on other alternatives to just driving, though, with the release of the bike plan and the work that the bicycle plan implementation team is doing, as well as with the piloting of car sharing in Hollywood, and and with gas prices, we feel that we're planning for the future in terms of travel and mobility in Hollywood. And if density makes sense in most parts of the city, it's around these transit stations. And so we're here to support the project. Thank you.
I think what's important on this, in this dialogue, my understanding, if I heard you correctly, because you got buses competing and acoustics are terrible here, there's a whole range of stakeholders that the office has engaged.
Yes.
And that what you are saying is that the council office is confident in supporting this project because of that process that you undertook and working with this whole range of stakeholders.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Can the planning staff come on forward? Now, we heard some assertions about findings and reports written for, written about, and a lot of different observations in terms of your recommendation as a professional staff person. Would you like to respond to that?
Let me first take the time to accept the applicant's correction in that the zone change and high district is before you as part of moving it forward to the full council. It wasn't part of the appeal, so I do want to make that correction.
Say that one more time.
The zone change and the high district, I think I wasn't as clear in terms of the fact that the zone change and high district change as part of the CPC case is before you in moving it forward to the full council.
Okay.
But it's not part of the appeal because it was legally it's not appealable by the appellant based on the fact that it was just a recommendation by the commission. So it is before you overall. It wasn't appealed, that particular portion.
Okay, so then how does that in any way impact assertions made about your performance?
Just to clarify that, but in terms of the assertions made by the findings, what we are presenting to you is based on what the applicant had provided, and we reviewed it, made some corrections, and we believe that that is sufficient in terms of what the project had gone through in terms of the 2 or 3 years that it had in terms of preparing the project, going through the EIR, and that is now before you. Now, in terms of the particulars, I mean, I could kind of cover some of the issues. I think some of the main points are first the parking.
But before you go that detail, there's something that stands out in my head. If I heard correctly, did anyone write anything for you?
Yeah, okay. I just...
Jim Tokenaugh with the City Planning Department. I just want to clarify that in all of the Planning Department's cases, whether it's a zoning administrator case, Planning Commission case, the findings are submitted by the applicants, and it's up to the Planning Department to either accept them, to modify them, or to reject them totally.
So that is part of the process.
It is part of the process, and in this case, the applicants did submit some supplemental findings, and we have tweaked them to our satisfaction, and that is what we submitted today.
And that's done on every case?
I can't say it's done on every case. Well, the findings are submitted by the applicants on every case. There's not supplemental findings always made at the Plum Committee, but in this particular case, we felt in response to the appeal that supplemental findings perhaps would be appropriate.
I just want to put on record that the staff is behaving in a manner that is consistent and transparent, and what we have in front of us truly reflects the work of the staff. Based on how you are describing it, it is common practice to receive information, to essentially look at it, analyze it, and propose language that we are hearing in front of this body today. Is that accurate?
It is common practice. And not only that, when the application is accepted initially, it is part of their so-called checklist that the applicants also provide their version of the findings. In other words, what their proposals are. So in this case, when it was appealed, the applicant has provided their version of the response, and I understand that it is our common practice that we review it. If there's any changes to be made, we make those changes, and that's what we have submitted to you today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the staff? Okay. All right. Well, given your statements and given the information that's provided to us, and I did hear Mr. Wright's assertions that perhaps what's in front of us is not a reflection of what is real, depending on who you're speaking to. But it seems to me that, and I'm going to ask you this, your recommendations today to this council, to this committee, what is your recommendation?
Based on the overall assessment that I had worked on this case for quite a while, it is denial of the appeal, and we're recommending approval of the project. We believe that it is appropriate for the site. It is in Hollywood. It's in the central part of Hollywood. It is currently a parking lot, which is underutilized. It is 2 blocks from the Metro Red Line, which is at Hollywood and Vine. And the alternative of not building this would be an existing large parking lot. It is a gap between what is Central Hollywood to East Hollywood, which is near the 101, that whole stretch of gap. And it is true, it is at the cusp of the higher density of Hollywood versus the lower density, which is closer to the eastern part of the 101 area. And therefore, you're going to see a change in the density and the height. However, this is the gateway. This is the easternmost portion of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In terms of the overall aspect of what we had assessed, staff is recommending.
How many committee meetings would you say has occurred given today's application?
How many?
How many community meetings? Community meetings.
Well, I understand they've been doing this since 2008. I don't know the numbers. I would have to defer that to the applicant. But I believe that they have, in good faith, have gone out consistently and try to address a lot of the issues that have come up.
Okay. Does the applicant have a number for us? Again, my decision is being really based on the support from the council, but also the level of work applied and level of consensus building.
Hi, Jessica Pacteman for the record. I would say we've had over 30 meetings with the community. This includes the Hollywood Studio District Land Use Committee Board, Hollywood Design Review Committee. I could keep going. Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council,
A lot of them.
Hollywood United.
Okay, over
Yeah.
30. Okay.
And the chamber.
Well, given the posture of the council office and given the explanation from the staff, I would recommend that we deny the appeal. And that would be my suggestion.
And also, the revised findings need to be adopted, Council.
Okay. Okay. So that would be the actions committee as stated by the CLA with the added language that was provided. Okay?
As well as moving the zone, overall zone changes I had tried to explain early on, moving it to the full council, the zone change and high district change. So both the tract appeal and the overall CPC zone change.
Is that clear for the clerk?
Yeah.
Yes? All right. Okay, that will be action of this committee. Our next item, Roberto?
Council members, item 7 is an appeal by Benjamin Camarena. He's appealing the decision of the Planning Commission which disapproved a conditional use for a recycling center in CD8. And the planner is present.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Carlos. I'm the hearing officer for this case. What you have before you is an appeal by by the applicant to the action taken by the City Planning Commission on December 9, 2010. The City Planning Commission denied a conditional use on the subject site, which is located at the corner of Slauson and 3rd Avenue. The conditional use has to do with recycling. It's a recycling facility. The applicant is challenging the findings made by the commission pertaining to the information contained in the findings relevant to the case. Also, the applicant challenges the action of the City Planning Commission because they think that they were not given an opportunity to make a fair presentation of their case before the commission. At the meeting, they claimed that there was new information that they will convey to the City Planning Commission, but they didn't have an opportunity to do that. The specifics of the case is that at the time the applicant submitted the application, there were 2 uses on the subject site. There was a recycling facility operating without proper permits, and there was an auto repair shop. The auto repair shop was vacated prior to the City Planning Commission. The auto repair shop was somehow related to some, I would say, criminal activities, but there is no hard evidence that the auto repair shop actually was connected to that. There was testimony at the public hearing that the auto repair shop was attracting drug dealers and prostitution. And that was conveyed at the hearing back in September 2010.
Now, those assertions came from whom?
The assertions came from members of the one lady member of the community who actually confronted one of the prostitutes. There was also testimony by the City Council that they had received information about these criminal activities there. And that was actually recorded on the staff report. They claimed that the applicant claimed that they were not given an opportunity to make their case because they had brought police department staff to the City Planning Commission meeting. And that's one of the arguments of the appeal. In any case, the recycling center is, the location of the recycling center is not in compliance with the Los Angeles Municipal Code. One key element or one key requirement for a recycling center is that it be placed 1,000 feet away from either a commercial use or residential use. And the fact here is that the recycling center is in a commercial use and is adjoining a single-family dwelling. Even if the applicant complies with all the specific operational conditions, the fact that the location is inconsistent with the uses adjoining the site, that makes the action of the City Planning Commission valid. That's basically the presentation. I'll be here if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Well, yeah, I was a little confused about what you said about the police testimony about the criminal conduct.
Yes, there wasn't. What happened is that at the public hearing there was testimony by the city council staff that they have received complaints about criminal activities around the site. The city council staff sent a memo to the police department to provide a report to me, so I could include that in the staff report. There wasn't any report from police to me, and according to the applicant, there was police staff at the commission hearing that were not given the opportunity to speak on their behalf. That's the point. The applicant also provided some evidence in the form of an email from the police department that there was not criminal activity any longer in that area because the auto repair shop had been vacated from the site.
But your findings are
But that's-
independent of any...
That, in a way, that's,
If I
even
could just, can I just, your findings are independent of any determination of whether or not there was criminal
That is
conduct?
correct. The
because of-
actual, I'm sorry.
Let me finish my sentence, please. Because of the location of the site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to correct the actual findings make a statement that there is no hard evidence of any that link the auto repair shop to any criminal activity. That's the point.
So the appellant is Mr. Benjamin Camarena, and do we have a representative or Mr. Camarena present? Okay, and you are Loris? Please come on up. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Soriev, and I'm working with the property owner who's helping Mr. Camarena obtain the permit, the conditional use permit. The reason for our appeal is at the last hearing, we were given the impression, we had asked for a continuation, and we were given the impression that the continuation would be granted because we were still, we were gathering together our information to put forward. I had in hand a letter from the neighborhood council, which I believe you have this booklet, which contains a copy of that letter, that was saying that in fact the neighborhood council wholly approved of this, and we even have representatives of the neighborhood council present. I had one of the reasons why I wanted a continuation is because there was an upcoming community advisory council meeting of the CRA, and I attended that subsequent to the hearing, and they are in favor of this. They have no objection. I had in hand also the email from the police department saying that they did not object to this. Not only was there no associated link of crime, criminal activity, particularly it was drugs and prostitution, to the auto repair, there wasn't any direct definitive link to the recycling center.
Right.
It was that there was a presence of drug use, people using drugs, and people and prostitutes in the area, which is something that had been going on prior to either of these businesses existing there. And in fact, since we assumed a certain causality to the fact that it was a church-owned auto repair shop that was a nonprofit organization, and the individual would take in disadvantaged people, drug addicts, try to teach them a trade to help them. And we believe that perhaps he didn't have a very good control system in place, and that as soon as he left, because that was a side business that he was doing because he was a church reverend, as soon as he left, they would bring their friends over and things would go on. And certainly there was also issues with parking, but that was related to the auto repair. Since he left in mid-September, there hasn't been any parking issues. There hasn't been any incidents of any drug use in front of the property. There may have been some instances with this one individual with a confrontation with a prostitute, but we maintain that is something unrelated to any business that's there at all. As a matter of fact, in terms of crime, I did a comparison study of the crime at this recycling center over the past 7 months from when the tenant of the auto repair left. So from October through the end of April, and I was using the map LA from the LA Times, and I did a 2-block radius, and the crime at this recycling center compared to the crime at the recycling center that's an open, this is an enclosed recycling center, which we feel mitigates the 1,000-foot requirement because it's contained within a building. It's not something that's out and open on an empty lot, and that's why we are saying we're trying to make recycling better. We're trying to be a model for something that is appealing to the community. We agree that the old-fashioned recycling center doesn't belong there.
Okay, so let me ask for the sake of clarity. Are you before us today to ask for a continuance? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we're asking, not for continuance, because we have all our information.
Okay.
What we're asking is that an appeal of the decision.
Okay, so you're just standing by your appeal. Okay. So I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
So our appeal is to have an approval of a conditional use permit for this site based on the information that I submitted in this package, which includes...
And I need you to conclude.
Sure. Just one point that I wanted to make was that the crime at the open recycling center on Slauson and West was 40% higher than for the same time period than this location, and the crime at the one on Florence and 8th was 23% higher than at this location.
Thank you, Ms. Arroyo. Thank you very much. We have with us two other speakers, and then we'll ask the council office to present their position. We have with us Trevor Chandler or Gandler? Gandler? I apologize. You are the owner of the property?
Yes, my name is Trevor Candler. I own the property. I've owned it for approximately 9 years. I'm going to try and run through a few points here as quickly as I can to stay within my time. What's being asked for is a conditional use permit specifically related to the 3 items that are not in compliance as of the zoning. One being the 1,000-foot rule. Obviously, it's impossible for us to create the 1,000-foot rule. Another item is landscaping. Because of the construction of the building along the property line on 2 sides, it's impossible to put the required landscaping along the property line. The third item is a recycling centre in a C2 zone is limited to the amount of area that the recycling centre can have. The contention is that how do you quantify the area that is actually the recycling compared to the area that is the parking and the administrative that goes along with it. During the time period that I've owned the property, for the first 6 years I was not able to find any real tenant. The only tenant that I was able to find was that non-profit small auto repair who was not a good tenant, but I needed somebody to help me pay the mortgage. The Camarina recycling business is at the site currently. It's returning over $1 million a year to the local community. That's how much it pays out to the local residents that take advantage of that facility. That money is then funneled into the local businesses and also generates tax revenue for the city. They also provide employment, 4 or 5 people. Crime in the area, 20% less than typical crime around a recycling centre of the conventional style, which is open parking lot, containers, everything done out in the open with nothing more than a shielded fence. This facility is inside a 5,000 square foot block building with an entrance off of Slauson and an exit onto 3rd. The CUP, if approved, would allow the city to have a much higher level of oversight of this property than the other uses that it has. The current operating permit is for auto repair, which is not regulated to the same extent. The only order to comply that exist are related to obtaining the correct permit. There are no other orders to comply, and code enforcement has had no complaints on the property in the last 3 years since the recycling centre has been in operation. And it's also supported by community council, local businesses, residents, police, fire, transportation.
Thank you very much. Wesley Smith, Jr.
Yes, I'm with the Park Mesa Heights Community Council. I'm also on the CAC for the Crenshaw-Slauson area. I'm here in full support of Camarina Recycling and the owner of the current building because we feel that it is benefiting our community. Now, if you deny a CPU to this, all you're going to do is take away jobs, and you're going to provide more blight in our area. Now, let's talk about crime. To be perfectly honest, it's overstated. Throw a rock and you'll hit a prostitute, a drug user, or a drug dealer anywhere in that community. I don't mean to emphasize that. It is South Los Angeles. Okay, so I've spoken to Officer Dixon. He's a senior lead in our community, and as long as the Camarinas have been operating the recycling center, no, there have been no problems. As far as it being detrimental to the residences in the community, as a matter of fact, 4 people on our neighborhood council board members actually use their recycling center to recycle because they find it's better than the one on Florence and better than the one on Slauson because that's where the drug people usually go, to those two. The only thing that you'll do if their appeal is denied is, like I said, provide another block with no businesses on it in South Los Angeles. Like I said, the neighborhood council, we wrote a letter in support of the Camarenas, and I vehemently and emotionally and everything think that it's okay.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
The residents who live adjacent, are they involved in the neighborhood council? Do you hear from them?
Yes.
And what's their position?
Well, the majority of them like it. And I'll be perfectly honest, there's always going to be someone against something. There's always going to be someone against something. The one that they made reference to where, she was attacked and all that other kind of stuff, I know her personally, Jonesy. Actually, she lives a couple of blocks away, and she's having problems with some of the residents in the area. It's not necessarily related to this facility. It has a lot to do with Van Ness Park and some of the activities that go on over there, and it kind of, covers. And to be perfectly honest, like I said, we were very surprised when we were told that the council office had been informed that that we were against this particular development or project or whatever you want to call it, because they've been supporters. The Chandlers have been supporters, and like I said, there's about 4 people on our board who utilize the facility.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service. Last but not least, Mr. Dennis Rodriguez, representing the council office.
Good afternoon. Dennis Rodriguez, representing Councilman Parks. Hopefully I can try to clear up a little bit of the confusion here.
Please do.
I'll do my best. The council member sent me here to basically inform you that we agree with the findings of the City Planning Commission, which made their decision on March 7, 2011. Specifically, we agree with the findings that the project will not be proper in relation to the adjacent uses. We agree with the finding that the project will be detrimental to the character of the development in the immediate area, and we also agree that the location of the project will be detrimental to the public welfare. We agree that there's a multitude of single-family homes within this vicinity that would be negatively impacted by the addition of this type of business. And in fact, although there's a representative here from the neighborhood council, we have received a multitude of phone calls in relation to opposition to this project. We also agree that since 2003, we have witnessed in general a general nexus between businesses of this type in Council District 8 and illegal and nuisance activity. Specifically, this location also had a auto-related use on its location that we've received feedback from the police department and the senior lead officer that was attractive of that type of nuisance activity in the past. So I believe that auto use is no longer in business. Having said that, we have received complaints from adjacent neighbors that this was an issue or has been an issue in the past in terms of nuisance activity. Lastly, the councilman wanted me to mention that he fought for an ordinance which is number 176840, which basically calls for restrictions to the location size and permitting process for recycling centers, as well as buyback centers, as well as auto-related uses. This would fall directly in line with that restrictive ordinance, and we believe that it applies here. Additionally, the use was operating without a permit for the previous 3 years, which also puts it in violation of this ordinance, which was just implemented. So we asked that you uphold the CPC denial, and we ask that you deny the applicant's appeal. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, Councilman? Okay, so we will move to deny the appeal. And have a second on that? Yep. Okay. That'll be action of this committee. Roberto, anything else?
Public comment, Councilman.
Anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.